Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. What just happened? The 2019 National Championship was supposed to be a battle between two prolific offenses, two dominant defenses, and was hoping to shape up to be even better than the previous two National Championship meetings between Clemson and Alabama. But this game was quite the opposite. Right from the start, Clemson came out and dominated the Crimson Tide, winning this game 44-16. And many people did pick Clemson to win this game, but one thing that no one saw coming was Clemson winning this game by 28 points. That's not something even the biggest Clemson fan could have predicted coming in to this game. It was unbelievable. Clemson stunned the nation just by how dominant they played against Nick Saban and the mighty Alabama Crimson Tide. This was the largest loss for Nick Saban during his time at Alabama. And as we mentioned, going into this national championship game, when we did our national championship preview, we mentioned that the defense was going to be the key. We thought this game was going to be close, as I'm sure many people did. Two great quarterbacks going at it, two great defenses going at it. We said it's going to come down to the turnover battle. Who's going to win the turnovers? Who's going to get the stops on defense? Clemson did that, and they did that right from the start. Winning the turnover battle, getting a pick six in the opening 2 minutes, forcing two turnovers overall. Tua Tagovailoa had just committed 4 interceptions in the entire season. He threw 2 in this game. Half of his season total was committed in this national championship game. And yes, he still had 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Brent Venables had a game plan, and I'm still surprised he has not taken a Power 5 head coaching job yet, because he is arguably the best defensive coordinator in the entire nation. He had a game plan, came out there and shut down that prolific Alabama offense, forcing 2 turnovers, allowing just 16 points, and holding them scoreless for the final 44 minutes of the game. And this was a game that was shaping up to be, as I mentioned, even better than the previous 2 national championship meetings between Alabama and Clemson. Going into the early second quarter, Alabama actually led 16-14. It was 14-7 in favor of Clemson less than 5 minutes into the game. Clemson opening the game with that pick six. Alabama responding right after that. Clemson, we just thought this was going to be a shootout, going back and forth, back and forth. Alabama up 16-14 early second quarter, and then after that it was all Clemson. Dabo Swinney and the Tigers coming out and showing why they deserve to be the national champions, showing why Alabama, they faced a little adversity, faced some injuries, faced suspensions. Same for Clemson, though. You cannot make any excuses of what happened in this game. You can't make any excuses for why Alabama played the way they did or why Clemson won. I mean, these were two very, very even teams that you saw in our preview. The stats lined up, the players lined up, and Clemson came out and got the job done and captured their second national title in the past 3 years. And it was just an unbelievable fashion the way they did that. Previewing the game a little bit, we mentioned how exciting it was in the first quarter and how disappointing this performance was for Alabama. And before we dive too far into that, I do want to address that the Alabama dynasty is not over, first off. Clemson might be becoming the new Alabama, without a doubt, because before we dive even more into that, let's talk about their 3 biggest playmakers in this game. Trevor Lawrence, the true freshman quarterback who became technically the second true freshman quarterback to win a national championship, because as you remember last year, Tagovailoa coming in and defeating Georgia in the national championship. But Trevor Lawrence, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns, 20 for 32 on passing, 20 completions on 32 attempts, and he is just a true freshman. Justin Ross, let's talk about him for a second. The wide receiver for Clemson, also just a freshman. 153 yards receiving on just 6 receptions, 1 touchdown, had 74-yard touchdown reception, had that juggling catch down the sideline, and had that remarkable one-handed catch down the sideline as well. If you haven't seen any of those plays, you need to go back and watch all of that. He is just a freshman. And then Travis Etienne, also just a sophomore, putting up some big numbers once again in this game. I think he had 3 total touchdowns. Clemson has their 3-headed monster on the offensive side of the ball. They are still going to be a dominant force on defense, and 2 of those key playmakers, their quarterback and their star wide receiver, are just freshmen, so will definitely be back next season. Clemson may be becoming the new Alabama. They will once again be kings of the ACC next season and are already favorites to win next year's national championship. They are really looking up. Dabo Swinney has built something there, and we were watching so many pre-game analysis of this national championship game talking about how difficult it has been for Dabo Swinney to build this Clemson program up, how impressive it has been for him to build this program up. I mean, if you remember, up until that Deshaun Watson national championship game, when they, what was it, 2 years ago when they beat Alabama, they hadn't won a championship since the 80s. I believe that's correct. So now they've won 2 national championships in the past 3 seasons. So all the credit in the world to Dabo Swinney and his game plan and building up this Clemson Tigers program and what they have done. And Clemson returning so many starters next season, they are once again going to be a threat. And right now, obviously the early pick to win the national championship in 2020. But as we mentioned, Alabama's play calling this game was very, very questionable, and many criticized Nick Saban for that, criticized that offense for Nick Saban. Arguably, the biggest question of the game, the fake field goal, what they tried to pull against Clemson. And we would think Alabama, getting a break of their own in the SEC championship game with Georgia pulling that fake punt, would never try something so stupid. The kicker was the lead blocker on that fake field goal, and they tried to run it nonetheless. They didn't try to pass it. They tried to run it up against that very dominant Clemson defensive line. And if you go back and watch that fake field goal that Alabama tried pulling, everybody in the entire stadium knew what was going to happen there. I called it. Clemson's defense knew it was coming. Everybody in the stadium knew Alabama was going to fake that field goal. The commentators knew they were going to fake that field goal. So why Nick Saban decided to continue and try to go for that fake, and maybe if he was planning on going for it, to just not send out Tua Tagovailoa and try to pick up the 4 yards or however many they needed to get the first down there. It is mind-blowing to me that Nick Saban tried to pull that on such a dominant Clemson defense, one that had been shutting them down for most of the day. So that was unbelievable. They had a 4th down and 4 later on in the third quarter, I believe, and Tua Tagovailoa tried to pick that up to scramble with that. Was unable to get it. Stopped about a yard short. Later on, down back in the red zone, they tried a quarterback keeper, and that was later on in the game. The game was about over, but still, a QB keeper and Tua Tagovailoa was wrapped up way behind the line on that play. So Alabama's inability to convert in the red zone was ultimately their downfall because their offense was clicking early on. Now, Clemson did make some adjustments, got the job done, was able to shut down that very prolific passing attack for Alabama. But nonetheless, their struggles in the red zone was their downfall. They lost by 28. They convert on 2 of those red zone trips, of course, being touchdowns, or maybe even 3. This game, it's a completely different ball game, much closer down the stretch. They just couldn't get it done, and all the credit in the world to Brent Venables and that Clemson defense, especially that senior-led defense, also obviously doing without Dexter Lawrence along the defensive line as well, for getting the job done there and shutting them down. We also mentioned back when we did our preview that Clemson's key was, yes, to win the turnover battle, but also to shut down the passing attack, force Alabama to win this game on the ground. And they did just that, forcing 2 Tua Tagovailoa turnovers. Bama did rush for 148 yards on the ground, but their leading rusher was Najee Harris with 59 yards. So their leading rusher just had 59 yards. As a team, they only had 148. That's a pretty good day on the defensive side of the ball. Clemson did what they had to do to get the win and captured their 2nd national title in the past 3 years. Another thing of note, and many people might, here's the thing, guys. You can't, once again, there are no excuses for what happened in this game. If the game's close, calls can go either way. I get it. But here's the thing. Clemson dominated this game from the start. You knew something was different in the air when Clemson picked off that pass and returned it for a touchdown so early on in that game, less than 2 minutes into the game. You knew something was going to be different about this national championship. Clemson was extremely disciplined in this game. Only 1 penalty for 12 yards. Alabama had 6 penalties for 60 yards. Here's the thing. That doesn't matter. The referees did not determine who won this football game. Now, Bama fans might say that it did. Maybe they will say that maybe it was a little skewed. Maybe there were some calls that didn't go Clemson's way, calls that didn't go Alabama's way. But nonetheless, the referees were not the reason for this 28-point victory in the biggest game of the season. Clemson was out there. I'm not going to go out and say Clemson wanted it more. I do believe 100% that Alabama wanted this game. But Dabo Swinney even came out and was like, we had the better team. We knew we had the better team coming into this game. Obviously, the revenge factor played a role there. The talent factor played a role there. But there are no excuses to be made. Injuries, referees, calls, nothing. It was all Clemson. And all the credit in the world to Dabo Swinney and this coaching staff and these very young Clemson team to go and beat the number 1 team in the nation the way they did. This is something that we have never seen before. I had never seen an Alabama team get dominated the way they did last night out in Santa Clara. That was truly unbelievable. And yes, like I mentioned, Alabama dynasty is not over. They will be back next year. They will be back in the college football playoff. They still have so much talent returning. Obviously, very talented recruiting classes. Obviously, probably the best coach in college football right now in Nick Saban. So I'm not worried about Alabama's dynasty ending. They're going to be back. They're still going to be probably the best team in the SEC, although Georgia is a very, very close second. But there's nothing to worry about if you're an Alabama fan. This was just a very, very bad game, a very poor performance. And I think, obviously, we saw some struggles that Nick Saban's going to have to work on this offseason to prepare this team to try to make another national championship run. And he has yet to break that record held by Bear Bryant for most national championships during the poll era. Could have broken it last night. Could not get the job done there. But Bama, you have nothing to worry about. Clemson, you have every reason in the world to be thrilled because you are building a dynasty. You are rising in the right direction. Everything is going Clemson's way for as long as Dabo Swinney is going to be there, for as long as they can maintain these coordinators, especially in Brent Venables as defensive coordinator. Things are going to be looking very, very good for Clemson, and they will remain kings of the ACC for as long as that may be. So this was a fantastic end in my eyes to see the college football season end, the 2018-2019 college football season come to a close. Yes, it was not the most exciting game in the world. Yes, maybe we wanted to see a much closer game like we had seen the previous two meetings. But once again, this is another playoff where we did not see the number one overall seed win the national championship. So that streak continues. Clemson won the rubber match when it comes to national championships, and the pattern continues. Bama, Clemson, Bama, Clemson. Will they meet again next year for the 5th straight time in the college football playoffs? Of course, we'll have to wait to find out. But we are just 228 days away from the start of the 2019 college football season, and I'm already getting excited, and I'm sure you guys are too. So as always, please continue to check us out here on YouTube. We are going to have plenty of content coming out. It's the off season. It's going to be tough. Of course, in the summer, we will have our team-by-team predictions like we always do. That's obviously our favorite time of year, and I'm sure it is for many of you guys as well. But we're going to have some content coming out up until that point. We're going to have our top 10 bowl games. We are ranking the bowl games as we speak right now. We are going through, analyzing these bowls, trying to rank our top 10. We'll have a video out for that. We're going to break down some coaching changes. We will have a Super Bowl prediction when the Super Bowl is set. And I know our NFL playoff predictions have been absolute garbage. We have failed on those, but hey, it is what it is. That is the fun in predictions. That's the fun in football. It's so unpredictable. So we screwed those up big time, but hey, what are you going to do? But we will have a Super Bowl prediction coming out on that. When March Madness comes around, we will address a little bit on March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So plenty of content coming out. Any content you guys want to see, please leave those in the comments below. We will take any suggestions that we can have to continue to have content all the way up until summer when we can start the cycle all over again, to start talking more college football and get ready for the 2019 season that's once again just 228 days away. So as always, please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.